The coffee in my mug was lukewarm, a cheap hazelnut blend that Sarah insisted on buying because it was buy one, get one free at the discount store. I held the ceramic cup with both hands, not for warmth, but to keep my fingers from drumming a rhythm on the table, a 4/4 beat, the cadence of a countdown. Across the kitchen island, my daughter Sarah was selling me my own death. "It's called Silver Meadows, Dad," she said, her voice pitched an octave higher than necessary, the tone one reserves for unruly toddlers or the hard of hearing. She slid a glossy brochure across the granite countertop. The paper stock was heavy, expensive. The photos showed smiling elderly people playing chess in a sunlit atrium that looked suspiciously like a renovated shopping mall food court. "Look at that. Doesn't that look fun? They have a bridge club. You used to like cards, didn't you?" I stared at the brochure. I had never played bridge in my life. I preferred poker. Specifically Texas Hold'em, played in smoke-filled back rooms in Macau or private suites in Zurich, where the pot wasn't chips, but controlling interest in shipping conglomerates. "It looks expensive, Sarah," I said. My voice was raspy. I made sure of that. I slouched slightly in my chair, shrinking my 6-foot frame into something smaller, something benign. The harmless, retired payroll clerk. Sarah sighed, a sharp exhalation through her nose that signaled her patience was a finite resource, and I was strip mining it. She adjusted the cuff of her blazer. It was a designer piece, Chanel, but 3 seasons old. I noticed a small fray on the inner lining of the sleeve. She was wearing her wealth, but it was threadbare. "Money isn't the issue, Dad," she lied. Her pupils dilated slightly, a micro-expression of deception. I had seen the same look on the face of a CEO in 1998, right before I exposed his offshore accounts to the SEC. "The issue is your safety. Living alone in this big apartment. It's irresponsible. What if you fall? What if you leave the stove on again?" I hadn't left the stove on. She had. 2 weeks ago. She had come over to cook for me, opened a bottle of Pinot Grigio, drank 3 glasses, and forgot the pasta water. I had turned it off silently. I never corrected her. Correction implies hope for improvement. "I like this apartment, Sarah," I said softly, looking around. I had bought this place in 1985. It was a pre-war building on the Upper West Side. High ceilings, crown molding, a view of the park. It was mortgage-free. The market value was currently $3.2 million. Sarah knew this. I could practically see the calculator scrolling behind her eyes. $3.2 million. Enough to wipe out her credit card debt, her underwater mortgage on the loft in Tribeca, and the disastrous investment she'd made in that cryptocurrency startup 6 months ago. "It's too much for you," she snapped, the mask of the caring daughter slipping for a fraction of a second. "You're 71. You spent 40 years sitting at a desk stamping payroll forms, Dad. You don't understand how the world works now. Real estate is a liability if you can't maintain it. This is about asset management." I took a sip of the terrible hazelnut coffee to hide the ghost of a smile. Asset management. She was lecturing me on asset management. To Sarah, and to my late wife, I was Bill the clerk. A man who went to work at 8:30 a.m. and came home at 5:30 p.m., smelling of toner and stale office air. A man who worried about coupons and gas prices. They didn't know about the second phone. They didn't know that payroll clerk was a cover provided by the finest private equity firms in the world. They didn't know that when I went on business trips for training, I wasn't learning Excel macros. I was in Detroit dismantling auto unions. I was in London negotiating the hostile takeover of steel mills. I was the man they sent in when a company needed to be gutted, cleaned, and sold before the ink was dry on the press release. I was a fixer, a cleaner, a shark that swam so deep the surface never rippled, But to Sarah, I was just an old man occupying a $3.2 million pile of equity she felt entitled to. I don't know, Sarah, I muttered, looking down at my hands. I'll have to think about it. There's no time to think. She stood up, her chair screeching against the floor. She began to pace the kitchen. The heels of her shoes clicked aggressively. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, Dad. Real pressure. Corporate pressure. Not whatever you did. Not counting sick days for secretaries. She stopped and looked at her phone. It had been vibrating on the table every 30 seconds. Is everything okay at work? I asked. She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Work? It's a war zone. Ethelgard Corp is under siege. We're hearing rumors of a hostile acquisition. Some shadow firm from Chicago. They're called Obsidian Holdings. Barbarians. They buy companies, strip them for parts, and fire everyone. I'm a vice president, Dad. I have a target on my back. I nodded slowly. That sounds terrifying. It is, she said, pouring herself a glass of water, her hand trembling slightly. But you wouldn't get it. You lived a safe life, a small life. You punched a clock. You never had to worry that a single meeting could end your entire career. I watched the water slosh in her glass. Obsidian Holdings. I knew them well. I had incorporated Obsidian Holdings 20 years ago as a shell company for this specific type of operation. And she was right about the meeting. There was a meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at Ethelgard headquarters. I drafted the agenda for that meeting 3 days ago. Maybe they will keep you, I offered. You are good at your job, aren't you? She glared at me. Good? I'm essential. I'm the head of brand strategy. But these people, they don't care about brand. They care about EBITDA. They care about liquidity. They're monsters, Dad. Cold-blooded monsters. Monsters? I repeated. Well, I hope you're careful. I have to go, she said, grabbing her purse. She didn't kiss me goodbye. She barely looked at me. I have a strategy session. I'm staying here tonight in the guest room. It's closer to the office. And tomorrow... Look, tomorrow is going to be hell. I need you to go to Dr. Evans for your checkup. I booked you an Uber for 8 a.m. Just stay out of the way, okay? Don't call me. Don't cause a scene. If the new owners see a confused old man wandering the lobby, it makes me look weak. I understand, I said. I'll be invisible. Good, she said. Think about Silver Meadows. I'm calling them tomorrow to put down a deposit. We're doing this, Dad. Whether you like it or not, it's for your own good. She stormed out of the kitchen, phone already pressed to her ear, barking orders at some terrified assistant. I sat in the silence of the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the wall ticked. I stood up and walked to the sink, pouring the hazelnut coffee down the drain. I rinsed the cup and placed it in the dishwasher. Precision. Order. I walked to my bedroom, the master suite Sarah coveted so dearly. I closed the door and locked it. I moved to the walk-in closet, pushing aside the rows of beige cardigans and polyester slacks that constituted my Bill the Clerk costume. Behind the shoe rack was a wall safe. I placed my thumb on the scanner, a soft beep, and the heavy steel door swung open. Inside there was no Bridge Club brochure. There was a stack of passports, a Sig Sauer P 226, disassembled and oiled, and a single, thin laptop with military-grade encryption. I took the laptop to my desk and opened it. I bypassed the standard OS and booted into a secure terminal. A prompt blinked green against the black screen. Identity confirmed. WR. Hensley. Status. Active. Current operation. Ethelgard acquisition. Role. Lead restructuring officer. I typed in a command. Access personnel files. Level 5. Clearance. The screen flooded with data. The organizational chart of Ethelgard Corp. I scrolled down. Past the CEO, past the CFO. I found the marketing and branding division. There she was, Sarah Evans, VP of Brand Strategy. I opened her file. I looked at her performance reviews. They were mediocre at best. Lacked strategic vision. Difficulty managing subordinates. Prone to emotional outbursts under stress. Then I looked at her expense reports. Company dinners that were actually dates. Travel expenses for conferences that coincided with music festivals. It was sloppy, amateur embezzlement. Not enough to go to jail for perhaps, but enough to be fired for cause, without severance. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the screen illuminating my face. She wanted to put me in Silver Meadows. She wanted to sell my home to cover the debt she incurred trying to play a game she didn't understand. She called me a clerk. She called me a burden. I looked at her photo on the screen. She was smiling. That tight, ambitious smile that hid a deep well of insecurity. "You're right, Sarah," I whispered to the empty room. "You don't understand assets. You don't understand that people are assets too. And you have just become a liability." I typed a note into the file. Flag for immediate review. Priority 1. Then I closed the laptop, returned it to the safe, and went back to the kitchen to make a real cup of coffee. Black, no sugar. The evening passed in a blur of tension. Sarah came home late, smelling of white wine and desperation. She ignored me, sat on the sofa, and furiously typed on her laptop, occasionally cursing the slow Wi-Fi. "They're coming tomorrow," she muttered, not looking at me. "Obsidian! The rumors are true. The CEO is stepping down. They're sending in a transition team. You know what that means? It means the axe. They say the head of the team is some ghost. No one knows his name, just that he's a butcher." I was sitting in my armchair reading a book on the history of the Roman Senate. "A butcher?" I asked Mildy. "That sounds violent." "Metaphorically, Dad," she snapped. "God, you're so literal. It means he fires people, he cuts costs, he destroys lives to make the stock price go up 3 cents. "Maybe he just cuts the dead weight," I said, turning a page. "Maybe he saves the company by removing the parts that are rotting." She whipped her head around, her eyes narrowing. "Are you calling me rotting? Are you saying I'm dead weight?" "I'm talking about business, Sarah," I said calmly. "General principles. Isn't that what you do? Strategy?" "You don't know anything about strategy," she yelled. "You balanced checkbooks. You were a cog, a tiny, insignificant cog. Don't you dare lecture me on how to run a company. I have a master's degree." "And a lot of debt," I noted. She stood up, her face flushing red. "I am going to bed. The Uber is at 8 a.m. Be ready. And if you're not out of here by the time I leave, I'm throwing your books in the trash." She slammed the guest room door. I sat in the silence for a long time. I looked at the book in my hand. It was open to the chapter on Brutus. "Et tu, Sarah," I murmured. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the city breathe. I visualized the Ethelgard financials. I ran the numbers in my head. The company was bloated. The marketing department was overstaffed by 40%. The R&D division was bleeding cash. It was a beautiful mess, a puzzle waiting to be solved. And tomorrow, I would solve it. The morning sun was gray and unforgiving. The city was covered in a low-hanging fog. At 7:45 a.m., Sarah was already at the door. She was wearing her power suit, a sharp navy blazer and a skirt that was slightly too short for a corporate environment. She was applying lipstick in the hallway mirror, her hand shaking. "The Uber is 5 minutes away," she called out. "Dad, are you ready?" I walked out of my bedroom. I was not wearing my beige cardigan. I was not wearing my polyester slacks. I was wearing a bespoke charcoal gray suit, tailored on Savile Row. The fabric was a blend of wool and silk that cost more than Sarah's car. My shirt was crisp, white, starch stiff. My tie was a deep blood-red silk. On my wrist was not the cheap digital watch I usually wore, but a vintage Patek Philippe. I had combed my hair back. I stood at my full height, my posture correcting itself after years of feigned slumping. Sarah turned around, capping her lipstick. She froze. She looked me up and down. Her eyes widened. She blinked, trying to process the image in front of her. The father she knew, the shuffled, mumbly old man, was gone. In his place stood a stranger, a predator. "Dad?" she asked, her voice wavering. What are you wearing? You're going to the doctor. You look like you're going to a funeral." "In a way," I said. My voice was different. The rasp was gone. It was a baritone, smooth and cold as polished steel. "Why are you dressed like that?" she demanded, a nervous laugh bubbling up. "Did you rent a suit? Is this for the nursing home interview? You're trying too hard." "I canceled the Uber, Sarah," I said. She frowned. "What? Why? You can't cancel it. I don't have time to drive you. I have the most important meeting of my life in an hour." "I know," I said. "I'm going to the same place." "What?" She stepped back. No, you're not coming to my office. Are you crazy? You'll humiliate me. You look ridiculous. Take that off." She reached out to grab my arm, to shake me, to assert the dominance she thought she held. But before she could touch me, a low rumble vibrated through the floorboards. We both looked out the window. Down on the street, directly in front of our building, traffic had stopped. 3 black Chevrolet Suburbans were idling at the curb. They were armored, tinted windows, government plates. 4 men in black suits got out of the vehicles. They were not taxi drivers. They were private security contractors, former Navy SEALs. I knew them. The one in the lead was named Marcus. I had hired him in Beirut. Sarah stared out the window, then back at me. Who is that?" "My ride," I said. I walked past her. I didn't shuffle. I strode. I picked up a leather briefcase from the hallway table. A briefcase she had never seen before. I opened the front door. "Dad!" she screamed, running after me. "What is happening? You're scaring me." I stopped at the elevator and pressed the button. I turned to look at her one last time. She looked small, confused, a child who had suddenly realized the monster under the bed wasn't a monster at all, but something far worse. "You said you wanted to know what real pressure feels like," I said. "You said I didn't understand corporate stress." The elevator doors opened. Marcus was standing there. He stepped out and nodded to me. "Good morning, Mr. Hensley," Marcus said. "The team is assembled. The board is waiting." Sarah gasped. "Mr. Hensley? Who is Mr. Hensley? Your name is Bill Evans." "Bill Evans was a clerk," I said, stepping into the elevator. "William Hensley is the man who's going to decide if you have a job by lunchtime." "Dad!" she cried out, grabbing the closing doors. "Wait! What are you doing?" I looked her in the eye. "I'm going to work, Sarah." I gently removed her hand from the door. "See you in the boardroom." The doors slid shut, cutting off her stunned face. As the elevator descended, I opened my briefcase. Inside was a single file folder marked in red. Ethelgard Corpue, Personnel Redundancies. Phase 1. Executive Leadership. I adjusted my tie in the reflection of the brass paneling. The clerk was dead. The fixer was clocked in. And it was going to be a very long day for the vice president of brand strategy. The interior of the armored Chevrolet Suburban was a sanctuary of silence. The glass was 3 inches thick, bulletproof, designed to keep the chaos of the world at bay. Outside, New York City was a noisy, grimy mess of honking taxis and steam rising from manhole covers. Inside, the air was filtered, cool, and smelled faintly of expensive leather and ozone. I sat in the back seat, my legs crossed, the dossier resting on my knee. Marcus, the head of my security detail, sat in the front passenger seat, his eyes scanning the perimeter through the mirrors. He didn't speak. He knew better. I wasn't paying him for conversation. I was paying him for the assurance that I could focus entirely on the dissection I was about to perform. I looked down at the file. Ethelgard Corp. To the market, it was a mid-sized branding and logistics firm struggling to find its footing in the digital age. To the employees, it was a paycheck. To my daughter, Sarah, it was a status symbol, a stage where she could play the role of the important executive. To me, it was a carcass. Obsidian Holdings had acquired the controlling stake at 4 a.m. this morning. The wire transfer had cleared while Sarah was still asleep in my guest room, dreaming of selling my apartment. The board of directors had been informed at 6 a.m. They had been given a choice: resign with a golden parachute and an NDA, or face a forensic audit of their last 5 years of governance. They all took the parachute. Now, the company belonged to me, or rather, it belonged to the algorithm of efficiency that I represented. 2 minutes out, Mr. Hensley, Marcus said, his voice low. Understood, I replied. I checked my reflection in the darkened window. The face looking back wasn't Bill the clerk. The eyes were hard, devoid of the milky confusion I had cultivated for years to keep my family comfortable. These were the eyes of a man who had stared down warlords in Angola and union bosses in Chicago. My phone buzzed. It was a text from the former CEO, Miller. Everyone is assembled in the boardroom. We are waiting for you. I didn't reply. Let them wait. Fear is a force multiplier. Every minute they sat in that room, wondering who the new owners were. Their defenses crumbled a little more. They would be sweating. They would be second-guessing every expense report, every sick day, every unauthorized email. By the time I walked in, they would be desperate for salvation or swift execution. The car pulled up to the curb of the Ethelgard Tower. Security was already there, holding the doors. I stepped out onto the pavement. The air was cold, but I didn't feel it. Adrenaline, cold and sharp, flooded my system. This was the moment I lived for, the reveal. We moved through the lobby like a shark moving through a school of tuna. The receptionist stopped typing. Security guards who weren't on my payroll straightened up, sensing a shift in the hierarchy. We bypassed the turnstiles. Marcus had a master key card and stepped into the private executive elevator. Penthouse level, I said. The elevator rose. 40 floors. 40 floors of mediocrity that I was about to purge. When the doors opened, the silence was absolute. The executive floor was usually a hive of activity, but today it was a tomb. The assistants were huddled at their desks, staring at their screens, terrified to look up. They knew the Reaper was here. Double mahogany doors stood at the end of the hall. The boardroom. Marcus walked ahead and pushed the doors open with both hands. I walked in. The room was vast, dominated by a 20-foot table made of reclaimed walnut. The walls were glass, offering a panoramic view of the city that these people believed they owned. Around the table sat 12 people, the C-suite, the VPs, and Sarah. She was sitting on the right side, 3 seats down. She was typing furiously on her phone, likely texting me, asking where I was, why I wasn't at the doctor's office. The sound of my footsteps on the marble floor was the only sound in the universe. Click, click, click. I didn't look at anyone. I walked straight to the head of the table. The CEO's chair was empty. Miller was standing by the window, looking pale. He knew who I was. He knew what was coming. I placed my briefcase on the table. I unbuttoned my jacket and sat down. Only then did I look up. I scanned the faces. Confusion. Fear. recognition. My eyes landed on Sarah. She had frozen. Her phone was halfway to her ear. Her mouth was slightly open, a perfect O of shock. She blinked once, twice, trying to reconcile the image of the father she had yelled at this morning with the man sitting in the seat of power. "Dad?" she whispered. It was barely audible, but in the acoustic perfection of the boardroom, it sounded like a scream. "Dad? What are you doing here?" The other executives turned to look at her, then back at me. A murmur rippled through the room. "Dad? Is that her father? The clerk?" I stared at her. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I let the silence stretch until it was physically painful. "There is no dad in this room, Ms. Evans," I said. My voice was projected, resonant, filling the space without shouting. "I am William Hensley, Senior Restructuring Officer for Obsidian Holdings, and I am here to decide who survives the day." Sarah's face went white. All the blood drained from her cheeks. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly. This is a joke," she stammered, looking around wildly. "Miller? What is this? This is my father. He's retired. He's confused. He shouldn't be here." "Sit down, Sarah," Miller said quietly from the window. He didn't look at her. He looked at the floor. "Do as he says." "But he's a payroll clerk," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "He stamps forms. Dad, get up. You're embarrassing me. Security." I moved my hand, a sharp, cutting gesture. "Marcus," I said. Marcus stepped out of the shadows behind me. He crossed his arms. He was 6'4" and wide as a doorframe. "Ms. Evans," Marcus rumbled, "please take your seat, or you will be removed." Sarah looked at Marcus. She looked at me. The realization began to dawn on her, the suit, the car, the demeanor, the sudden submission of her boss. The pieces were slamming together in her mind, forming a picture she couldn't comprehend. She sat down. She was trembling. "Good," I said. I opened the dossier. "Now that we have dispelled the family reunion fantasies, let's talk about business. Ethelgard Corp. is hemorrhaging money. You are bleeding $5 million a quarter. You are bloated, inefficient, and frankly, incompetent." I pulled out a stack of files. "I have spent the last 12 hours auditing your internal servers. I know everything. I know who is sleeping with whom. I know who is stealing office supplies, and I know who is cooking the books." I picked up the first file. Mr. Johnson, VP of Sales. A sweating man in a cheap suit looked up. "Yes?" "Your Q3 projections," I said, sliding a paper across the table. "You claimed a 15% growth based on the Helix contract. But the Helix contract doesn't exist. I called the CEO of Helix this morning. He said he's never heard of you. You fabricated the numbers to trigger your performance bonus." Johnson stammered. It was a verbal agreement. It was fraud," I said coldly. "You are terminated effective immediately. Your bonus is clawed back. And our legal team is filing a report with the SEC this afternoon. Get out." Johnson didn't argue. He grabbed his bag and ran. The door closed behind him. The remaining 11 people were barely breathing. I went through them one by one. The CFO, incompetent hedging strategies, fired. The COO, redundant logistics chains, fired. It was surgical. It was brutal. It was competence porn in its purest form. I dismantled their excuses with dates, timestamps, and IP addresses. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The facts were the weapon. Finally, there was only one file left. Sarah Evans, VP of Brand Strategy. The room was empty now except for Miller, Marcus, Sarah, and me. Sarah was crying silently. Tears ruined her mascara, running down her face in black streaks. She looked young, vulnerable. But I wasn't looking at my daughter. I was looking at an employee who was a liability. "Ms. Evans," I said. She looked up. "Daddy." "Please," she whispered. "Don't do this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about the apartment. I'm sorry about the nursing home. Just don't fire me. I have a mortgage. I have debt. If I lose this job, I lose everything." "You lost everything months ago, Sarah," I said, flipping open her file. "You just didn't know it yet because you were floating on a raft of lies." I pointed to a paragraph in the report. "Brand strategy. Your department has spent $400,000 this year on market research, but 80% of that budget went to a consulting firm called Urban Edge, LLC. Interesting name." I looked at her over the rim of my reading glasses, glasses she had never seen me wear. "I looked up the registration for Urban Edge, LLC. It's registered to a residential address in Tribeca. Your address, Sarah." She flinched as if I had slapped her. "You were funneling company money into your own shell company to pay your mortgage," I said. "That is not strategy. That is embezzlement." "It was a loan," she cried. "I was going to pay it back. The market turned. I just needed a bridge." "And the cryptocurrency mining software installed on the marketing servers?" I asked. "The electricity bill for this floor is 3 times higher than the rest of the building. You were using company hardware to mine digital coins, which ironically crashed last week." She put her head in her hands. "Please. And then there is the matter of your time," I continued, relentless. "According to your calendar, you were at strategy retreats for 6 weeks last year, but your Instagram, which you really should make private, Sarah, shows you were at Coachella and Burning Man and a spa in Tulum." I closed the folder. The sound was like a gavel striking wood. "You are not a victim of a hostile takeover, Sarah. You are the reason the takeover was necessary. You are a parasite on this organization." "I'm your daughter," she screamed, standing up again. "How can you be so cold? You're my father. You're supposed to protect me." I stood up. I walked around the table until I was standing right in front of her. I towered over her. "I did protect you," I said softly, "for 30 years. I paid for your college, I paid for your wedding, I paid for your divorce. I pretended to be a boring, safe little clerk so you would never have to feel the shadow of what I really do. I made myself small so you could feel big." I leaned in close. "And how did you repay me? You tried to put me in a warehouse for the dying. You tried to sell my home out from under me. You treated me like a broken asset to be liquidated." She was sobbing now, racking, ugly sobs. "You wanted a professional, Sarah," I said. "You despised Bill the clerk. You wanted someone who understood assets and liabilities. Well, here I am, and I have evaluated your performance." I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope. "You are terminated for cause. Gross misconduct, embezzlement. There is no severance package from the company. If we were strangers, I would have you arrested right now." I placed the envelope on the table. "Pack your desk. You have 10 minutes. Marcus will escort you out." I turned my back on her and walked toward the window. "Dad," she wailed. "Dad, please." "Marcus," I said. I heard the heavy steps of the security guard. I heard Sarah struggling. Then the sound of heels dragging on the carpet. The doors opened and closed. Then silence. Miller, the former CEO, cleared his throat. "That was impressive, Hensley, even for you." I looked out at the city. The fog was lifting. "It needed to be done," I said. "The rot goes deep." 20 minutes later, I walked out of the building. Sarah was standing on the sidewalk. She was holding a cardboard box. It was raining lightly now, a cold drizzle that slicked the pavement. She looked like a drowned rat. Her hair was plastered to her skull. She was shivering. When she saw me exit, flanked by security, she didn't scream. She just looked at me with hollow, shocked eyes. She looked at the bespoke suit, the Patek Philippe, the aura of power that I wore as easily as a second skin. She stepped forward, blocking my path to the car. "So that's it?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "You just throw me away? I'm homeless, Dad. I can't pay the mortgage on the loft without this job. The banks will take it. I'll have nothing." I stopped. I motioned for Marcus to hold back. "You wanted to sell my apartment," I said. "You wanted the $3 million. I was desperate. We are all desperate, Sarah. Character is what you do when you are desperate." I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket. I pulled out a thick document and a check. "I told you I understood asset management," I said. I handed her the document. "This is the deed to my apartment." Her eyes lit up. Hope, pathetic and greedy, flared in her chest. You're giving it to me?" "Read it," I said. She looked at the paper. Her face fell. "Irrevocable blind trust," she read. "Beneficiary, the Zoological Society of New York?" "I transferred the title at 9 a.m. this morning," I said. "The apartment no longer belongs to me. It belongs to a trust. It cannot be sold. It cannot be leveraged. And upon my death, the proceeds go to feeding the lions at the Bronx Zoo. You can't touch it. The creditors can't touch it. It is gone." She stared at the paper, shaking. "You gave $3 million to a zoo just to spite me?" "To protect it," I corrected, "from you." Then I handed her the check. She looked at it. It was a personal check from William R. Hensley. $50,000, she whispered. "It's enough for a deposit on a rental apartment in Queens," I said, "and enough for food for 6 months while you look for a job, an entry-level job, something you are actually qualified for." "I can't live in Queens," she spat. "I'm a VP." "You were a VP," I said. "Now you are unemployed, and you are lucky I'm giving you anything at all." I stepped closer to her. "This is the last check, Sarah, the last bailout. The Bank of Dad is closed. Liquidation is complete." "I hate you," she hissed. "I hate you so much." "I know," I said calmly, "but you respect me now. And more importantly, you fear me, which means you won't come knocking on my door trying to steal my life again." I walked around her. Marcus opened the car door. "Dad?" she called out one last time. She sounded small again. "Where are you going?" I paused with one foot in the car. "I have a meeting in Tokyo tomorrow," I said. "A shipping company needs cleaning. I hear their CEO is terrified of a hostile takeover." I smiled, a cold, razor-thin smile. I love the terrified ones. They are so easy to fix. I got into the car. The heavy door slammed shut with a vault-like thud. The lock engaged. Through the tinted glass, I saw Sarah standing in the rain, clutching her box of desk toys and the check that was her new reality. She looked at the building she had been exiled from, and then at the car that contained the father she never bothered to know. "Drive," I said. The engine roared. The convoy pulled away from the curb, merging into the traffic of New York. I pulled out my phone. I deleted Sarah's contact from my favorites. I moved it to a folder named Archive. Then I opened the file for Tokyo. The clerk was gone, the fixer was back, and business was good.